Hi, my name's Rob Goddard, and I've been buying and selling businesses for the past 20 years, both home and abroad. And I wanted to share with you a story that I came across only 2 weeks ago. True story about a business sale transaction between a buyer and a seller. I'm going to share with you a summary of the conversation because I think there's some really good learnings in this. And I would summarize the next few minutes in the following way. If you're watching this and you'd like to sell your business one day for a fraction of what it's worth and get landed with unnecessary fees and tax, then listen to what I'm going to be sharing over the next few minutes. So here's the seller. The seller says, my business is worth over £500,000 turnover last year. It's making 50k profit before tax, and I'd like to sell it for £275,000. It's a multiple of just over 5 times earnings, so I think that's quite reasonable and fair, particularly in current conditions. The buyer says, look, the business hasn't been growing, and whilst you've got assets on the balance sheet, you've also got a lot of debt, and actually it's worth nothing on paper. You bought the business 2 years ago with a bridging loan of 150k, and that's costing you 30k in interest alone every year. It's clear to me that your business is a hassle and stressful, and the fun's gone out of it. So I'm prepared to take it off your hands today for £20,000. And I can complete within a month. That'll leave you free to walk away and not look back. Oh, and you'll have to cover my legal costs because that's quite typical and normal for a case like this, situation like this. The seller says in response, should I instruct an advisor to handle the sale for me? The buyer opportunistically says, no, you don't need to bother with an advisor and that sort of expense. They usually get in the way of a deal and they often charge exorbitant fees. Trust me, this off-the-market transaction will be clean, simple, and enable you to walk away within weeks. And there you have it. Summary of a discussion between buyer and seller. A business making 50k profit, net profit, sold for £20,000, and also the seller had to pick up the legal costs on the other side as well. So that business was sold for 7% of its asking price, and they picked up unnecessary transaction costs as well. Now, you might think that I hold the buyer responsible for this. I don't. I think they were just being opportunistic. I blame the seller. I hold them responsible for the deal that they agreed to. And I'll tell you for why. There's 5 reasons why the seller is at fault. Number 1, they never instructed an advisor to represent them. Any advisor worth their salts would have said no. £20,000 is not sufficient. Number 2, the seller never got an alternative bid or quote or quotes. Don't know whether £20,000 was a good price or not, a fair price or not, because there's nothing to compare it to. There was no competitive tension. One buyer is no buyer. Number 3, the seller believed the buyer that it was normal for the seller to pick up the buyer's legal costs for the transaction. No, it's not. You cover your own costs, so the other side cover their own due diligence and legal costs, not you as the seller. 4th one, they paid more in tax because they sold their business, they sold the assets of the business, not the shares. Now, I don't know their particular tax situation, obviously, but it's quite likely that they wouldn't benefit from entrepreneurs relief. So they've paid more in tax. They've paid double in tax because they've sold the assets, not the shares. And 5thly, they've carried on assuming the debt because that 150k bridging loan has not been repaid at all. The seller is left with the debt in the business. The buyer has bought all the good bits and the seller is left with the bad bits, and they've still got a shell company which they've got to extract the cash from, and that's hassle and cost for the seller still. So in summing up, as a good book says, a fool and their money are soon parted. If you don't want to be parted with your money foolishly, and actually one day you want to sell your business for a premium price to a good fit acquirer and get a reward for all the blood, sweat and tears you've put in over 10, 20, 30 years, then get in touch with us here at evolutioncbs.co.uk. Either have a chat with me or one of my directors, and we'll have a chat about your situation. You deserve to get the best price possible to the best fit bidder. Don't be taken in like this chap was a couple of weeks ago. Thank you. Oh, and by the way, if you want to read about how to avoid pitfalls like that, get my book, The 11 Commandments and the 7 Cardinal Sins of Selling a Business. You can either go on Amazon and pay me a royalty, or you can contact someone at the office and we'll send out a complimentary copy to you in the post. Thank you for listening.